Welcome to the Viking Redzone special edition for the 2020 mock draft. We're coming to you today. We're actually going to do two more teams today. We're going to do the Detroit Lions and the Oakland Raiders. I just want to point out to everybody out there that this is kind of an off-season thing, that normally we have sponsors, but our sponsors pay for our high school football season from the beginning to the end of that. So this is just kind of an off-season thing where we kind of fill the void, and we're kind of just putting something out there to kind of entertain ourselves, basically. So we don't have any sponsors for the next few weeks on what we're going to be doing here. We're just getting on the mic, having some fun, talking to some people. But for this week, we have a special guest that's going to be doing the mock draft. He'll be doing the Detroit Lions. He'll be doing the Los Angeles Raiders. So we brought him in to talk a little bit about the two teams and what he's looking at doing and on the thing. So welcome to the show, the elite wrestler from the Vinton County Vikings, Mr. Brandon Grigsby. How you doing today, Brandon?
Thank you, Lug. It's always a great intro. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and I probably known you was wearing that shirt. I wouldn't have said all them nice things about you. But
didn't hear the whole video, but okay.
We're going to act like you haven't. Anyway, so let's get to, before we get to Detroit or we get to the Los Angeles Raiders, let's just talk a little bit about what's in the news, about what's going on real fast. So the NFL expands its playoffs to 14 teams over 12. You now only have one team with the bye week. Whoever gets the number 2 seed now will have to play the 7th ranked team in the playoffs. So you're adding a game to the playoffs. You're adding a team on both sides. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the playoff expansion?
I feel like more football is never a bad thing in the eyes of the common fan. So I'm all for it, man. I don't really see any downside to it. I think it's going to be more money, which is basically what everything's all about. And like I said, more football is never a bad thing.
At what point do you think, and let's relate this a little bit to the college football arena, where they wanted to, for the longest time, it was just the best 2 teams and played for the national title. Now you got 4. You're always on that 4-man bubble of, now we won 8. At what point do you start muddying the waters, especially in the NFL, when you don't want half the league like the NBA that can make the playoffs, because it absolutely ruins the regular season, because you're not playing for as much, because 50% of the NBA makes it to the playoffs. So at what point do you start muddying the water? Is it close, or is that 7th team making the playoffs still not that bad of a number?
No, I think it's I don't know. You worded it in a way I haven't heard before. Now you got me on the fence with it.
I'll tell you in my opinion, just where I'm going with this. And you look at other sports and the way they do the playoffs, and I bring up the NBA and the way they do it, and it kind of ruins the regular season, but it does make the playoffs kind of fun. But that first round of the playoffs still isn't that great. But in a contradiction to that, you go to the NCAA and the 64-man playoff teams, and all of a sudden it's epic, because every once in a while a 15 seed knocks off a 1. 3 12s usually win every tournament bracket. So you look at those numbers in the NCAA, and it seems to work out well. And you look at baseball, from 1969 to 2002, only 4 teams made the playoffs out of 30 teams. Okay, now it's all the way up to where I think 6 or 8 teams make. I think 6 teams make the playoffs in baseball now. So you got 12 total teams in baseball that make it, and it started muddying it up a little bit. Because you're only 6 teams are making it, which is still a low number, but it lost a little bit of the luster. So I don't know. For me, the NFL going to 7 teams, you're kind of starting to change the history of the NFL a little bit. And I don't know. I can't say it obsessed me, but I was okay with 6. That's my opinion. But
I just think it has to evolve. I think everything does. One game isn't a huge adjustment. I think it could have been more. I think there were some people that did want more, right?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, you start appeasing and again, you use the word best, the common fan. I feel like when we say common fan, we're saying we want to appease millennials now, because that's kind of the age group that's kind of becoming the new fan base now, So I don't know if I want to appease the common fan. The common fan is going to be there regardless, right? I mean, what makes football great is the hardcore fans and the fanatics, and I think that's who you should probably gear to a little bit more. But
well, as a wrestling fan, I can tell you one thing: it's never geared toward the hardcore fan. It's all about catching those people just flipping through and then seeing this and saying, "Oh, maybe I'll give it a try." It's all about the common person just kind of catching it and then becoming a more solid viewer. And I think this does that in a way. I also heard that the NFL is going to start airing games on Nickelodeon.
Oh my, that'll be interesting too.
I know. I'm super
Well,
excited.
let me
Romo and
ask.
SpongeBob on commentary.
We'll say this real quick, and then we'll move on to the teams. But staying in this playoff conversation, 9-7, Tennessee Titans make it as a 6th seed. Okay, they make it to the AFC Championship game as the last wild card spot to make it. How there's going to be 8-8 teams now make it to the playoffs as that final wild card. Teams that are 500 will now be in the playoffs. That's okay to you. You know, it doesn't bother you to see a team that only went 500 in the NFL.
I mean, if you remember back to Marshawn Lynch's greatest moment, I think they were negative and made the playoffs in a wild card. So it's happened. I mean, 500.
They
is
had to
better
win their
than,
division that year to make it, but yeah. So,
well, I mean, still,
yeah.
If the cards line up that way, man, take it, run with it, and have your opportunity.
We're going to find out. It's a year away, and we could have a whole other conversation on going to a 17-game season. I'm not a big fan of that. You start tinkering with history. You start ruining history a little bit because now it's going to be the LeBron factor where, oh, LeBron's outscoring everybody in the league. Well, yeah, he's played 19 more years than everybody else. So you start averaging them 17-game season, and you muddy all the history and the stat books and everything. So I'm not a big fan of it. But
yeah,
okay.
Let's criticize the guy that kept care of his body enough to make it 20 years.
Well, he didn't necessarily keep track of his body to make it. He started playing in the NBA when he was 12.
All right.
That's a difference. But all right, we're going to move on to let's get to Detroit. Let's get to Detroit. You draft 3rd this year for our mock draft. You draft for Detroit. We're going to talk a little bit about what they've done. They've got Jamie Collins in free agency. They got Danny Shelton in free agency. Darius Slay leaves, takes off to the Eagles. Let's talk a little bit about that controversy with him and Matt Patricia. Slay all of a sudden just comes up and wants out of Detroit at the end of the season. Comes to find out when he gets to the Eagles, he spills the beans on something that happened in the locker room with him and Matt Patricia. We know the story. Everybody out there knows the story. We can't say it on air. But Matt Patricia was basically kind of calling him out, saying, hey, being a little wussy, you got to man up a little bit. And, Slay took offense to it. Was that an overreaction by Darius Slay to act and treat that situation the way that he did?
I think exposing everything might have been too far. I think he could have just said there were some differences in opinion, some words were said, and people would understand or kind of just get an idea. So maybe airing it all out was a bit much. But Darius Slay, man, I think when he got drafted by Detroit, he fully embraced Detroit. I don't think he wanted to leave until he realized the culture was changing in a way he wasn't on board with. I think the Quandre Diggs trade really upset him. It did upset him. He was pretty vocal about it. I just think it was a difference of opinion, and that was kind of the icing on the cake. But I don't think airing it out was the right move. I think it kind of muddied up his side of it.
Do you think Darius Slay doing this, he's in the Eagles now? Do you think he was so upset at Matt Patricia by airing this? He's like, okay, I'm going to shorten the leash on Matt Patricia to be able to stay at Detroit if he doesn't start winning. Do you think that was kind of what's going on? And is it true? Is Matt Patricia now on a really short leash in Detroit?
I believe so. It seemed kind of like a desperate move to me. He hasn't had much success in Detroit. And to me, that seems like a guy desperate to try and reach out to his team and connect on that personal level, like he's one of the guys in the locker room. It was kind of a desperation move, I think, to kind of connect with his top star, and it was a misfire.
It was, and I think time will tell. We're going to see this. Obviously these two are kind of, they're separated now. That's kind of over with as far as that dispute. But I think the lasting effect on what happens with Matt Patricia, we're going to see it quickly. We're going to see it this year, I think. So we'll see what happens there. So
I agree completely.
Let's get to your 3rd pick in the draft. Okay. I am not a big fan of what I like to call sideways moves in the NFL. Okay. Now, you did have Darius Slay leave, which leaves a major concern for cornerback. You have Okudah in the draft, which everybody's pretty much locked in at the, hey, that's who Detroit's going to take. To me, that's a sideways move. You were already a bad team in the NFL, okay? You missed the playoffs last year. Darius Slay wasn't getting you into the playoffs, and now you're going to make a sideways move to replace a guy probably that didn't help you get into the playoffs. Is there a better pick? Is there a better way to improve the team for the Detroit Lions than just doing this sideways move for Okudah?
So I've thought about this, and this isn't a spoiler to what I'm going to do in our draft, but what I think maybe Detroit should explore. If they're not interested in going with Jeff Okudah at 3, maybe they just explore the free agent market. They don't usually hit the free agent market super hard, but maybe that changes this year. They filled that cornerback and secondary role with a free agent. Trade out of the 3 spot. Let Miami have Tua if that's what they want. Move down, get another solid wide receiver, like a 3-piece to that kind of punch through the air. You've got Galladay, Marvin Jones, and then I'm thinking maybe a little Jerry Jeudy would be nice.
Yeah.
So it would be a sideways move maybe for one more season, and then you kind of end up right where they are now, and then maybe next year draft a little Trevor Lawrence, you know?
Let me ask you this, and
Maybe sideways one more year is not too bad.
Just the way you bring that up, and I want to ask you this: the strongest every year they rate the positions in the NFL draft, and a couple of years ago, defensive linemen were supposed to be epic, and drastically the best position in the draft. Offensive linemen have been there a couple of years. This year, the quarterback class is kind of strong, but the wide receiver class in this draft is as highest and the strongest rated wide receiver class we've seen in years as far as depth, the talent from the top 4 guys. Is there an opportunity that even if third, if nobody comes into trade and they can't drop down, is there any chance at third maybe they do what you say? Matthew Stafford's coming towards the end of his career. You want to build him up. You want to give him weapons to get into the playoffs. Is a Jared Jeudy, is a CD Lamb a possible pick at third for the Detroit Lions?
I don't know about third. Like I said, I think a third piece to that wide receiver core would kind of set it over this. I think Detroit's offense has hit a steady flow of consistency that needs a spike. It needs something new. I think Kerryon Johnson was a solid pickup, and I think one more wide receiver would be a huge addition. I think Jerry Jeudy is a solid route runner. I think that's where the NFL is starting to go in terms of elite receivers. I think athleticism is kind of getting figured out a little bit more, and that's kind of where I think like Ruggs falls in. But I definitely do think it would be a CD Lamb or a Jerry Jeudy, but I don't think it happens at 3. It's a little early.
So Tua comes out, gets a clean bill of health. He goes to team doctors and gets an overwhelming, impressive outlook for supposedly going into this draft. Does Tua, being that healthy now and coming in, and we know the risks that are involved with Tua, but does him being that healthy change anything for Detroit? Are they thinking, okay, we might need to be looking at the future past Stafford? You just mentioned yourself, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, there's no question Tua's could potentially be as good as Trevor Lawrence if he's healthy. Is that a possibility?
I don't think so. I think in Detroit right now there's too much negative to add more doubt into the mix. Tua had a source close to the family say that the current coaching arc isn't something that he's interested in. So there's already doubt on if Tua would even want to be a Detroit Lion. So I just don't think adding more doubt to that locker room is a solid idea right now.
Yeah, that's a good point too. So, okay, all right, we're going to go ahead and move on from Detroit here. We're going to get to the Las Vegas Raiders now. So what you picked, 12th and 19th with the Raiders. A lot of reasons we picked you to be the Raiders. I'm going to let you, kind of roll into that on your own. Let's go into actual free agency right now. They did sign safety Jeff Heath. They got Kwiatkowski, the linebacker, which is one of the best linebackers in free agency, so that's a huge pickup for him. They got Corey Littleton, another good linebacker in free agency. They bring in Nelson Aguilar. I think he might have dropped his luggage on the way to the game. I'm not sure. I think his hands are that bad. So coming to the stadium anyway. They got Carl Nassib, a good defensive end. They got Jason Witten. I know everybody says he's old. He comes back to Dallas and he's kind of unproductive. You can't replace veteran leadership and the knowledge he'll bring to that locker room, though. So I think that's still a good pickup for them. They
That's
busted
good.
on Eli Apple. I mean, they couldn't come to a deal after trying to sign him in free agency, and that falls through. And now Eli Apple's back on the free agency market. So I think if they would have kept Eli Apple, that would have put him over the top a little bit as far as the free agency goes. It was still a pretty impressive free agency for the Los Angeles Raiders right now. Uh, but let me ask you this: Marcus Mariota. They signed Mariota, which was a little bit of a surprise for the Los Angeles Raiders. I don't think most people have seen that coming. What does the Mariota signing mean for Derek Carr's future in Los Angeles, Las Vegas? I'm sorry. Yeah, I've got to get used to the Las Vegas thing, man. It's going to be hard. So,
Hey, I'll tell you what, man. Marcus Mariota, he's a game changer. All right, I'll tell you what. It's wild.
that's Jon Gruden that just showed up. By the way, good to see you, John. So,
Thank you. I felt pressured to do it. No,
so go ahead.
I have no idea what that means, man. I don't think Marcus Mariota is there to accept a backup role, but I don't think he just walks in and takes it away from Derek Carr. I think they've had a pretty steady career on paper. I think they're right at the same level. But Mariota has a Heisman. I think there's still untapped potential in there at an NFL level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what a Heisman ever does to get you further in the NFL, though. But I mean, he does have one.
I mean, it means something. People look at it.
I mean, they do. He's obviously struggled in Tennessee, and of course, you know, my brother's down there in Tennessee, and the conception or the consensus, I'm sorry, with Mariota was he was a super nice guy, and they were just giving him every chance they could because he's such a nice guy. And eventually, it was just like, hey, this just wasn't working. So I don't see him going to Oakland and taking Derek Carr's spot. I like Derek Carr. I think he's a good player. I think they played Russian roulette with their wide receiving core for the last 3 years, and they've missed most marks they tried to hit on that too. So I just don't think Derek Carr's in any danger of being benched over in Oakland. So let's go with talk a little bit about Gruden. He didn't make the playoffs this year. It looked like Oakland was the paper champs a couple years ago. Las Vegas had them picked as the number one team to win the Super Bowl after they signed Bruce Irvin, a guy from Seattle who had 30 tackles, and they were like, oh, this is the next up and coming. Oh, my gosh, they're going to be great. They end up, they ended up busting. They didn't do anything. For the last 2 years, they haven't been in the playoffs. I know Gruden signed a 10-year contract, but does Gruden have to make the playoffs this year? I mean, is he going to be on the hot seat if they don't make the playoffs in 2020?
So I think he'll be on the hot seat, yes, but I don't think it'll be on like the hottest seat. So I think if they miss the playoffs again, but manage to get a little bit more steady, just overall as an entire organization, I think right now, I think that owner, Mark Davis, I think he likes headlines. I think he likes flashy moves. And I don't think Gruden shies away from them either. And they need to just look at more steady moves. You know, the Khalil Mack thing was the first move he made when he got there, and that was highly controversial, and that kind of set off his, entire trajectory as the Raiders head coach these last 2 years. And AB, obviously, the next huge backfire. I think he just needs one move to hit, just one.
Yeah, I mean, the backfires say a lot there, right? I mean, I think the only thing that saved him from the Khalil Mack trade is the Bears are stuck with him now trying to move him, and the financial burden that he carries to hurt a team is showing up big time in Chicago, which I think saves Gruden a little bit, even though they really didn't come out ahead as far as talent-wise on the field. But, you look at the Brown move, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now it's starting to look bad, right? So, I mean, It only takes one or two more busts to put you on the, in the unemployment line in the NFL, right?
Name value means a lot, and Gruden's name has a lot of value. But I think that keeps him in there. 10 years is a long time to get fired in less than 5. So I've known a lot more unsuccessful head coaches to make it longer than 10 years. They're like,
I know one in Cincinnati. Yeah, made it quite a long time. So, okay, so let's get a little bit to the draft. Let's look at last year's draft real quick. Cleveland Farrell goes in the 4th pick in the draft. I think you could argue that's a head scratcher, and I think it was at the time that it happened. I think, all season long, and ended up, being a head scratcher. But Max Crosby, a 4th-round pick out of Eastern Michigan, comes in and plays kind of like what you were hoping Cleveland Farrell would be dominant, but it ended up being Matt Crosby. I think he took a little bit of the pressure off of the Farrell struggles. But obviously, that first pick was crazy. It made no sense to do that. So, you're going into this draft. You need a wide receiver. That's got to be the number one thing. They got to be looking at Jared Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb. You got Ruggs that's coming up. You got that great wide receiver out of Colorado that's going to be a heck of a pick for somebody, but he's probably not going in the first round. But who do you think the Oakland Raiders are looking at between those top 2 wide receivers, at least between Ruggs and Jeudy?
I'm a huge Jerry Jeudy fan, man. I think the route running, like I said, is where the league is going in terms of who becomes elite. I think you look at Devontae Adams, who literally brought Chad Johnson to tears last summer when he was watching him run routes. I don't know how real that was, but it was entertaining. And Ruggs is just he's athletic, and I think the league's adapting defensively to find more ways to shut that down. And now you're needing those guys who can cut and make routes like AB did, like Devontae Adams does now. And I think Jerry Jeudy's the top receiver in this draft.
Yeah.
Maybe not by a mile, but he's definitely the top guy in my opinion.
I think Jerry Jeudy's. I don't think you go wrong with CeeDee Lamb. If you want to pick between 1 and 2.
Solid pick.
Yeah, I think they're both great picks, but
I just don't have a lot of confidence in a Big 12 defense.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you're going into this draft, you're the Oakland Raiders, and I don't know how Gruden feels, but we did hear Mayock come out and say last year that, listen, anytime we get an opportunity to improve our roster at a position, we will improve that roster. And he basically says, I don't care if you're a 90 rated in Madden. If I can get a 92 rated at that position, we will go with that player. We will put the best player on the field. We will sign that player. So, you're looking at the chance Tua goes 5. Herbert's looking at 6. Jordan Love's jumped up to where I've seen him in a few mock drafts at 6. But You got Herbert and Love both kind of toggling around that top 15 area. If either one of them fall to 12, is that a possibility for the Oakland Raiders? Are they going to take that quarterback over that wide receiver?
I'm a huge Jordan Love supporter. I think he's the sneaky pick in this draft. But I think they figure it out with what they have. I think that's a pretty loaded QB room in Las Vegas already. So I think they figured it out between Carr and Mariota. And I think they just build around that. I think if they wanted to go defense, they're still looking to find their identity on defense. Farrell didn't work out. But maybe you build around Crosby, you build around those linebackers you brought in, and you take a guy in the secondary, or you focus on the offense, because I think the offense is looking for a key target away from just Jacobs in the backfield.
Okay, yeah. I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. It was great to have you on here.
My pleasure.
We're gonna be doing this whole big mock draft thing here in just a couple weeks, and we already got 3 weeks before the draft, so we got to make it all happen pretty quick. So it's gonna be fun to do, but. I'm excited to see what you do. You do have a couple other teams that you pick in the draft, by the way, and I can tell you who they are. You got the Chargers, the Seahawks, and the Chiefs, by the way. So
I thought I had the Bills.
No, you do not have the Bills.
What?
There might have been
Mafia, man.
There might have been some toggling going on with some trades that happened. That could have happened to balance out the teams, but that's who you got. So yeah, we'll make it happen. Now it's gonna be fun. So
that's good.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on the show. We will be posting something here in the next couple of days with another interview about another team. The Bengals will be coming up soon. I'm excited to do the Bengals. It's going to be great, too. So
you're the only one.
Yeah. All right, man. We will talk to you later, and go Buckeyes.
Go Blue.